Did you know if you put Deathfire Grasp on a true damage unit, it ends up dealing bonus true damage? You can also combine the new Radiant Sterak's with Unending Despair to unleash a devastating single target burst. Riot may have fixed Blighting Jewel with Tesla, but there are still a ton of new interactions in the Set 10 revival I can't wait to share with you. But first, a quick word from today's sponsor, Opera GX. As you know, I'm not a player that likes to spam the same meta comps over and over because I want my TFT experience to be exciting. Your average browser nowadays feels like playing a contested reroll comp, and this is where Opera GX is different. You can fully customize your browsing experience with mods and change your entire settings with a click of a button. Here is how it works. First, you need to install a mod, which is super easy. You just visit the store, look for any mod you like, and click on install. Besides changing the theme, mods have their own wallpaper, play background music, and activate browser and keyboard sounds, each creating their own unique experience. If you want, you can mix different mods together, like changing the background music, or you just swap all of the settings in one go. You can also go to the bottom of your sidebar and further adjust the browser to your liking. Maybe there's a specific feature you want to disable. Speaking of the sidebar, there are a ton of useful features here. For example, AI integration. You can either open a chat on the sidebar or use a shortcut if you want to learn more about a specific topic. Perhaps you're playing the Set 10 revival and quickly need to figure out which superfan item you have to plan around. You can also use apps like Discord or TikTok and use them while you're browsing. Having everything in one place is super convenient and it elevates your browsing experience to the next level. Make sure to download Opera GX with the link in the description or in the pinned comment below. Thanks again to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. The first artifact I want to cover is Fishbones. It doubles the range of the holder, grants a respectable 50% attack speed, and causes the holder to attack random enemies within range. The most interesting users for Fishbones tend to be units that cast their abilities on their current auto attack target. For example, someone like Annie can easily run Fishbones instead of Nashor's Tooth to make sure she's not stuck on the enemy main tank in the front line. Samira can also be quite funny with this artifact because she doesn't swap her targeting during her cast. If you're lucky, you can one-shot the enemy carry, but it's quite the gamble. Overall, Fishbones doesn't perform that well on Samira because it's often better to target down the enemy frontline together with Urgot. The one unit that in theory sounds absolutely amazing with Fishbones is Jhin, but sadly he can't utilize the random targeting. It may look like Fishbones is working on Jhin, but this only applies to the current target once Jhin activates his violence. After the initial target is focused down, he will swap to the closest enemy for the rest of the fight. It can be useful if you manage to catch the enemy carry, but I feel like it's too big of an investment for such a low chance. Arguably, the best way to use Fishbones is to combine it with other range increasing artifacts like Rapid Fire Cannon or Sniper's Focus. Now, range increase in Set 10 is rather awkward. After Set 9.5, Rapid Fire Cannon was removed and the artifact rework occurred in Set 11, so back then Sniper's Focus used to be the only way to increase range. The units in Set 10 were clearly not made with range increase in mind, and you don't have to look far to find units griefing themselves. The prime example for this is Urgot, who spends most of the fight attacking in an AoE cone. Unfortunately for him, the ability doesn't scale with range and it looks more like a cone of shame. He is literally dealing no damage. True Damage Akali is in a similar boat. She hits 3 enemies within a 3 hex range, but the moment there's nobody in range anymore, she ends up wasting her cast on empty hexes next to her. But there are some melee units that are still surprisingly good if you increase their range. Edgelords like Riven and Yasuo are the frontrunners for this strategy. Ranged edgelords won't dash through their target, instead they stay safely in the backline. This allows you to fully focus on damage, and both Yasuo and Riven can become an absolute menace if you max out their attack range. In theory, you can do the same with Yona, but it's not exactly a repeat of the windshield wiper Nyla in Set 9.5. He kind of works like Jarvan in Set 14, meaning he deals damage to his target and adjacent enemies. While Riven is perfectly happy in the backline, Yone is a lot more about taking damage, stacking his Omnivamp and healing back to full. For him, I would recommend sticking with a normal item build. The next artifact is one of the strongest in the set 10 revival and something you should always consider taking, Trickster's Glass. While you can't copy your headliner effect, there are ways to get around it, for example with the help of the Augment Talent Search. Trickster's Glass only increases the max mana by 10% and for a lot of units this is not a big deal. For example, emo units have 20, 30 or 40% less mana and a lot of them don't even have that high of a base mana cost anyway. Now you might think having an additional unit to sacrifice for the emo trait is amazing, but back in set 10, Riot made a change that caused all these summoned units like Illaoi Tentacles, Target Dummies or Trickster copies to not grant mana to emo units when they're taken out. This is not a problem because there are other ways to use it. One of my personal favorite comps in set 10 tries to run as many Lulus as possible on the board. You can achieve this with augments like Hologram, Cloning Facility or Trickster's Glass. Lulu only has 40 base mana and the more hyperpop units you have on your board, the more mana you can generate.
He's pinging me. Why am I losing to this?
Finally, let's talk about the most insane stuff you can pull off in set 10. The artifact responsible for the strongest tags is Horizon Focus. This artifact is an absolute top tier pick because of units like Vex, Cannon, Echo and Thresh. All of them have AoE stunts in their kit, but if you dig a little bit deeper, there are much more interactions you can find. The Crowd Diver trait has surprisingly good synergy with Horizon, because when Crowd Divers die, they leap onto the furthest enemy, dealing magic damage and stunning enemies within 1 hex for 1.5 seconds. At first glance, this doesn't sound too impressive, as only Qiyana has crowd control in her kit, but Qiyana is all you need. She is part of the True Damage trait, and as I mentioned at the start of the video, it interacts with Deathfire Grasp for additional damage. The same applies to Horizon Focus as well. To finish off the tag, all we need is the Suspicious Trenchcoat and an Ionic Spark. The initial split won't trigger Crowd Diver, but now you have 3 Qiyanas that will absolutely wreck their targets with each cast. Once the copies are taken out, each of them will trigger an AoE Horizon proc in the enemy corner with up to 45% additional true damage. Getting 2 specific artifacts can be quite difficult, but the next time you open with Living Forge and you see Horizon Focus as your first artifact, you can simply give it to Cannon or Echo and potentially pivot into Qiyana if you find the trenchcoat later in the game. Horizon Focus was also often used in combination with Silvermere Dawn, since every auto attack is a stun and therefore procs the max health damage. You might remember a tag I showed in set 13 that combined Silvermere and Horizon on Draven with the Wolf anomaly, because for some reason the Wolves were able to proc the interaction without suffering from the attack speed debuff. As it turns out, you can repeat this tag in set 10 with Yorick. I know it sounds hard to believe, but every Yorick ghoul will proc Silvermere with the auto attacks and consequently trigger Horizon Focus, making this one of the most insane combos you can get in set 10. Thankfully, Silvermere by itself is already plenty strong and you don't need any fancy tech to get great value out of this artifact. Units like Vi, Urgot, Zed and Jhin all love this item for rather different reasons. Vi is just your normal intended use case because she has a lot of HP, hits hard and is quite similar to Violet from set 13. Besides Yorick, you can also give Silvermere to Zed. He spawns shadows that fight for him and also stun their targets with their auto attacks. But even if Riot fixes this interaction, it's still one of his better items. Zed only has 50 mana, gets a free cast from EDM, and his shadows don't interact with his attack speed. This can be a bad thing if you're trying Anger Issues Zed, since the shadows don't work like set 14 Zeri and won't attack faster, but it's a good interaction with Silvermere because they get to use the high bonus AD without any downsides. Jhin is also a great user for Silvermere because his attack speed can't be reduced. He converts bonus attack speed into AD and the penalty from Silvermere never applies. The only downside is that he can't stun his target with his violence, but I still think it's a good item for Jhin just for the stats alone. And now we get to Urgot. He might look like a complete fool with rapid fire cannon, but he becomes rather overpowered if you give him a Silvermere Dawn. When Urgot ults, he gets a flat 0.75 base attack speed, converts all of his bonus attack speed into AD, and ignores the attack speed reduction completely. After the 8 seconds are over, the penalty is completely gone. Now you can argue he only has 20 mana, so it's not that big of a deal, but to be fair, this doesn't look like an intended interaction. Sadly, his cone does not AoE stun, so all things considered, he works exactly like Jhin, but as a 2-range Mosha, he gets more value out of the tank stats and being immune to crowd control. The final artifact I want to highlight is Innovating Locket. The holder receives mana after getting hit, and each cast restores 20% of their max health over 3 seconds. There are a ton of great users for this artifact in set 10. The most obvious choice is Garen. With every cast, he gains bonus max health, and with the help of the Locket, gains more and more health regen to the point that he effectively becomes unkillable. It's recommended to combine this with Archangel because the bonus health scales with AP. Keep in mind, you still need a proper carry like Riven 3 or Caitlyn, because Garen might be an impressive wall in the front line. It's also easy for him to get stuck on the enemy main tank. You can also use Innovating Locket on units that effectively have no mana lock like Evelynn or Zac, because she ults a lot, has a very short animation, gets bonus HP from the KDA trait, and gains mana immediately after casting.
I still have a few power spikes with RE2 as well. Uh-oh, it's Radiant BT, Radiant Titans, Death's Defiance, Yoda 3. This is a battle for the ages.
Arguably, the best Locket user is Amumu. He only has 30 base mana with the Emo trait, has a passive that stacks armor and MR if he's your headliner, and has a very powerful spell that scales with defensive stats. A single Amumu 3-star with Stoneplate and Innovating Locket can keep the entire enemy team busy for days, and it's even possible for him to be at the top of the damage charts. In theory, you can also combine Innovating Locket with the Deeproot Gauntlet, as it grants a lot of bonus HP and CC immunity, making it the perfect item to close out your build. As a final tip, if you want to try some of these artifact strategies yourself, but you keep missing the right augments, here's what you do. Look for the Heartsteel Cassandra headliner and activate 3 Heartsteel in either stage 2-2 or stage 2-3. Play your strongest board so you win your fights and protect your HP. The amount of points you gather doesn't matter in stage 2. Next, you want to run 5 Heartsteel and raise the stakes in stage 3 and make sure you lose the next 4 fights. You gain 72 points per fight for a total of 288, and with the remaining points you collected throughout the game, you will always clear the 300 cash out. This is the best cash out in the game because you have a 25% chance to get 2 artifact anvils with 2 reforgers and a 25% chance to get 2 spatulas, which opens the door for a prismatic trade. I have to say, playing set 10 with the new artifacts has been a lot of fun so far, and I can definitely recommend trying it out yourself. I hope you learned something, and see you next time.